Diablo 4 is getting a ton of new surprising features. The devs also do a deep dive on level scaling, and we finally have that butcher surprise, although it might surprise you guys a little bit. We have the Diablo 4 launch times for both the early release and the regular standard launch, and we'll briefly go over the Xbox Home feature and if you'll be able to play early with that. We got a lot to talk about. What's up, World Server? Back in the video, and we're checking out all things Diablo 4. Okay, so first up, let's just jump into that butcher surprise, as that was kind of making rounds in the recent days. And for the butcher surprise, they ended up announcing a Diablo 4 Demon Meat Shake. It says that the Diablo 4 Demon Meat Shake makes its way to 1,000 RPG fans in New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago on May 19th. Now, for the rules here and a few other things, it's a little bit confusing. It says here, if you're in one of those cities, you can go ahead and tweet at Diablo with the hashtag Demon Meat Shake in the Diablo promo hashtags and try your luck on May 19th. And it looks like people from Twitter have already been added by Diablo, and they're basically adding them, telling them that their shake is being prepared and being ready to be sent out. However, then we have another tweet here from the Diablo Twitter that says the Demon Meat Shake drops tomorrow 11 a.m. PST. So seemingly you could have already won prior, which again, I would have thought that you would have been able to sign up after 11 a.m. PST. But no, it seems like if you signed up beforehand or if you made the tweet beforehand, then you could still win, and then therefore by 11 a.m. PST, the meat shakes would then be delivered or at least be prepared. So the rewards seem to be a vegan meat shake, or at least what they're claiming to be a vegan meat shake, a sticker, and a red latex glove. And if you're not in those three cities, which was NYC, Chicago, and LA, then you'll receive a gift card prize instead, because the meat shake is only going to be delivered to the winners directly. And those gift cards are also limited and restricted only to the residents of the USA. So there's a bit of confusion there, and also it seems like people aren't too happy about this promotion, which, yeah, it seems a little out of touch for them to be promoting a sort of shake when Diablo fans probably don't really care about that. Although they did do the promotion with KFC, although I think in that case it was a little bit more closer to reality, whereas this is just a meat shake, a red glove, and a sticker. It just doesn't seem like this is going to sit well with fans, or at least people just don't really care. And yeah, like others are saying, it just seems a little bit out of touch for them to be pushing for this, and like others are pointing out, they're just doing a little bit too much marketing for the game, that it doesn't really even need that. And even people here asking if this is an April Fool's joke, and yeah, it just seems a little bit out of touch, but I am curious on what your guys' thoughts on the promotion is. But we do also have to talk about those surprise new features that they're adding, and there are over 50 of them. I'll go over some briefly really quickly. And the first one here, they just have button mapping and dexterity assistance. But as far as button mapping goes, they said that you can put all of your inputs in, but you still cannot do WASD movement, which I do think is a major issue for the game, especially with all the latency and lag issues for ranged, or many times my character is not auto-attacking anymore and walking up to a mob. And yeah, there's force stand and force move, but I don't think that you should have to use those, especially when WASD will remedy all of that. Still not sure why they won't add that, if it's some sort of like coding management or they don't feel like adding it. Yeah, I just don't get it, and they really do need to add WASD movement. They probably will, but a few months later. Now they do also have a skill toggle and action wheel activation. By enabling this feature, you can transform the need to hold a button to cast a skill into toggle. The same can be applied to choices on the action wheel as well. And they noted here as an example, certain skills such as Barbarian's Whirlwind require that by default that the player press and hold a button. Skills of these types continue until their associated resource cost runs out or the button to the cast of them is released. So you'll be able to put that on a toggle button. You can also swap your right and left sticks, which is for controller players, and you can also enable persist target lock. Enabling persist target lock will ensure your skills weapons stay focused on an enemy instead of whiffing, which, yeah, a ton of controller options here, but I really wish they would add stuff for keyboard and mouse. And of course they have text assistants like cinematic subtitles and speech to text.
Hello, my friend. Stay a while and listen.
I think the big category here is the vision assistance, which here they have details of the font and cursor resizing. They also have in-game gear audio cues. Essentially, when you hover over that item, it will make a noise, or any gear item will make a little ding sound. And they even allow you to control the rarity of the item to play certain cues. They also have ambient audio cues. But I think the biggest feature here is this player and item highlighting. And they said to increase the readability, this feature can be enabled to have players, enemies, objects, and NPCs outlined by personally selected color highlight. And I actually really like this feature here by changing the color, because some of the colors didn't really stand out on the outlines. I also think this is going to be really good for co-op sessions to be able to distinguish which player you are. And last up here, of course, they do have the screen reader, which essentially just reads stuff from the actual menu. We also do have to briefly talk about the launch times for both both the standard and early edition, and there actually was some confusion. In fact, I thought the game launched on June 2nd, but it actually launches on June 1st for the early access, and this is at 4 p.m. PDT or 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And for the standard edition, it is those same times on June 5th, so 4 p.m. PDT and 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Now, Blizzard also did go over the level scaling, and there's a few big notable things here that we didn't know, or at least couldn't have applied to yet. They said here, when you play in skipped campaign state version of the game, the world is going to scale to you entirely. But it is to note that you can only do the skip campaign version once you've already beat the campaign once. So this is more so for the Season 1 start. And they also said you can choose to stay in World Tiers 1 or 2, and the monsters will never get higher than level 50. But they did also note here that each stronghold will be a few levels above your character level, which makes it a challenge. They did say here that you could choose and go engage with that if you want. Now, there has been a lot of debate with World Tier 1 and 2, but they did note here that the level of monsters across Tier 1 and Tier 2 will be the same. You can then play in Tier 3 once you've gained access after completing a level 50 capstone dungeon at the end of Tier 2. And again, even if you're level 60, the monsters will still stay at level 50, at least for World Tier 1 and Tier 2. They did also mention that you could get a couple levels higher than the monsters in the area if you want to out-level a region, particularly during the campaign. And for the co-op stuff, there's a few things to note here because there was a bug and an issue that I hope is addressed by launch, but they did say the host of the party owns the state of the world. If you're aligned at some point in the quest line, then all of your progress will be shared. However, if you're misaligned, like you invite someone new halfway through, then they won't get the story quest progress XP until they catch up. However, there was a major bug issue during the beta, whereas people were getting misaligned even being on the same parts, and some people were saying that it was due to the cutscenes being skipped. So hopefully that's addressed there, because there were certain people at certain times where they said they both completed the quest together, they went to turn in the quest, and then afterward, one of the people lost their quest progress. But they did make note here, if you're playing with a group that's not committed to playing together, always best to have a player with the least amount of progress to be the host, which yeah, that makes sense, you're helping them catch up to where you're at. They also did make note that D4 scales individually for players, so questline progress aside, a level 1 character and a level 30 character can play together. I also wanted to briefly go over a note here. We had Diablo 4 early access shared on Xbox home consoles, and essentially if you know that with Xbox you can essentially share games with up to one other person by setting their home console to their console and then you staying logged into yours account, then that way both of you would share the games. However, the question was if this is accessible from the console that is set to the home console and not to have the account, which most people said that if it's not attached to the Blizzard account then it probably won't work. So we'll have to see how that plays out, although I don't think that you'll be able to play early because you don't have the account tied to Blizzard, or at least the other person won't when they just have it set to their home console. But that does about cover for today's video. If you enjoyed it, like, subscribe, and until the next one, deuces.